Hello, welcome to The World Today on CGTN, live from Beijing. I'm Pan Dong. We start in diplomacy. Chinese President Xi Jinping is on a state visit to France. President Xi Jinping had talks with his French counterpart Emmanuel Macron in Paris on Monday. Expressed willingness to work with President Macron to begin another 60 years of relations. The two sides have also issued several joint statements and signed multiple cooperation documents. Now, for more on that, let's cross live to our reporters Dong Xue and Cam Brown in Paris. Let me start with you, Dong Xue. Bring us up to date on the meeting and the visit.
Sure, Pandan. On Monday, Chinese President Xi Jinping had a very productive day in Paris. Multiple deals were signed and the two sides agreed to continue strengthening relations. President Xi and President Macron talked about bilateral relations spread over 6 decades of friendship, with both sides hoping to deepen their cooperation even further. While trade and investment came up in a big way as both China and France attach great importance to their economic ties. France is China's third largest trading partner within the EU, and China is France's largest trading partner in Asia. Well, a shining example of this is the French farm to Chinese dining table chain that China and France are set to create. It will see close cooperation between the two sides, bringing French wine, cheese, and other products to people in China. And President Xi said that the two sides will also be tapping cooperation potential in emerging areas such as nuclear energy, innovation, finance, green energy, smart manufacturing, as well as artificial intelligence. Well, China and France reaffirmed their commitment to open their markets to one another and to better promote people-to-people exchanges. President Xi announced that Beijing will extend a visa-free facility to France by the end of 2025, a move that will ensure stable and healthy development of the relationship between China and France. And there was also a trilateral meeting among President Xi, President Macron, and European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen. In that meeting, President Xi said that China always approaches its relations with the European Union from a strategic and long-term perspective and regards Europe as an important dimension in its major country diplomacy. President Xi also touched upon the so-called overcapacity issue, pointing out that China's new energy industry has made real progress in open competition and represents advanced production capacity. He said, and I quote, "It not only increases global supply and alleviates the pressure of global inflation, but also contributes significantly to global climate responses and green transition." So the so-called problem of China's overcapacity does not exist either from the perspective of comparative advantage or in light of a global demand. Well, here in France, President Xi will be kick off his day 2 visit where we'll see more of a relaxed touch with President Macron hosting President Xi in the southern Pyrenees, a mountainous region from where the French leader's grandmother comes from. It could be more Chinese tourism to this scenic place in southern France, especially since the two countries have made a promotion of cultural and tourism a key dimension of their friendship. Pandong.
Well, Ken, you've been following this very closely too. So how are the French government and French people reacting to President Xi Jinping's state visit to France?
Well, yes, but just as we've heard from Dong Xue, we had a really packed day of diplomacy yesterday. Bilateral and trilateral talks. French President Emmanuel Macron really rolling out the red carpet for Chinese President Xi. We saw the full pomp of a proper French welcome with a horseback escort between the Élysée Palace and Les Invalides. We also saw French and Chinese flags flying together along the promenade between those two places. We saw hundreds, if not thousands of people throughout the day lining up there. Something of a carnival atmosphere with the local Chinese community out in force. People were dressed in traditional Chinese dress from the Song, Yuan and Tang dynasties. Lots of people waving French and Chinese flags. Plenty of curious tourists too, looking on, taken aback really by the grandeur of it all. So during the day we saw gifts, official statements, speeches, press conferences, flying. It was hard to keep pace, really, even for those of us on the ground here in Paris. So plenty for the political correspondents to pour over today. I think the French government was particularly pleased that everything went off without a problem. Yesterday, a huge security operation on the ground between the French police, the military, the gendarmerie, in terms of the details and the concrete outcomes of the visit. The reaction was very positive from the French business community in relation to the 18 bilateral cooperation agreements in areas such as green energy, green development, aviation, innovation, and what we hear are called people-to-people exchanges. So that means things like more student exchange programs, internships in French and Chinese companies, also better mutual access. As we heard, President Xi has extended the visa exemption program for French tourists, so now they don't have to go through the visa application process. They can enter China for 2 weeks without any problems there. The French also say they're going to reciprocate and ease fast-track Chinese applications for tourist and short-term business visas. France, of course, the world's most visited country, expecting some 120 million Chinese tourists here. They are considered high-value tourists too. Chinese people generally spend more here in southern Europe than almost any other tourist. Chinese people, big fans of French fashion, French food, French culture, French football. I mean, who isn't really? The French also have a certain fascination for Chinese culture, Chinese history. So on the diplomatic side, we heard from French inside sources that President Xi seemed receptive to concerns about trade imbalances. They said that the objective of this visit was really to get their message across. So it seems that, you know, the French, the EU, China have all been very clear on where they stand, from conflicts in the Ukraine to trade. So a lot of the more sensitive talks on the business was done yesterday. Today, more of a personal visit in the south. We also heard from the French media that there's a possibility that China may announce a big order of French aircraft, of Airbus airplanes, potentially around 50 aircraft ordered by China today. That is the guess in the French news, according to local sources. So huge interest, really, and a constant stream of reaction to President Xi's visit as it continues today.
Thank you very much. Our reporters Cam Brown and Dong Xue in Paris. Now, for more insight into this state visit, we're joined in the studio by Dr. Jingling and Mr. Aina Tangen. Thank you very much for joining us, dear guests. So we've heard the outcomes so far from our reporters in Paris following this visit very closely. Would you say this is another occasion for the two sides to strengthen their political mutual trust, Doctor?
Yes, it's a very important time for China and France to strengthen their cooperation. And far beyond that, because China-France bilateral relations really have global implications. As we all know today, we are at a very critical stage of the world order. We are living in a turbulent time with wars, conflicts, geopolitical tensions, and the risks of de-risking, etc., etc. So what kind of messages both leaders send out to the world is really impactful for the future scenario of our world.
So what messages you've been getting so far from the two leaders, crucial messages regarding all those critical challenges you just mentioned?
We have witnessed the very common spirit of cooperation and to see the bilateral relations from the strategic dimensions. I still remember, both President Xi Jinping and President Macron and even the European Commission President von der Leyen have emphasized the importance of cooperation to deal with the global challenges in today's turbulent time. So strategic communication, strategic coordination, strategic understanding, and also the cooperation are the keywords we could get from the past meetings among the leaders.
Well, Mr. Tangen, do you share the same reading so far? Cooperation is the keyword right now?
Well, cooperation, but action is even more important. I mean, while they were doing the news read, I noticed the absence of any protesters. This would not be true if it was Joe Biden who was there. Xi Jinping is bringing good news. He's talking about economic cooperation, the three principles of security, civilization, and development initiatives, the things that he believes are absolutely essential to a multipolar world where it's driven by consensus. But what is he bringing? I think there are 13 or 14 different contracts that were inked. That puts dollars, francs, or renminbi on the line. And it really does signal to Europe that China is a different type of entity. This comes at a very important time. You have the 75th anniversary of the founding of China, the 65th of the expression of the principles of the non-aligned movement, which some see as a precursor to a lot of the three initiatives that Xi has been pushing. It's the 60th anniversary, obviously, of France and China, and the 25th anniversary of the bombing of Belgrade embassy, of Chinese embassy in Belgrade. So when you combine these things, it talks about the history of China, the fact that it has not been the aggressor, that it has restrained, that it's built its relationships on trade and mutual benefit. Very, very different contrast, perhaps, from other countries, especially the U.S.
Now, let's focus on China-France ties for now. Notice, just as you mentioned, 4 joint statements have been issued after the meeting between President Xi and President Macron regarding the situation in the Middle East, biodiversity and maritime cooperation, AI governance and agricultural exchanges. Why these 4 are so important on even a political level, Ms. Tangle?
Well, these are the things that they can agree on. And obviously, they're trying to highlight the areas of cooperation. It can be about principles, but there has to be something where you produce something, especially in today's world where people are concerned about the economy, about inflation, about conflict, about climate change. These are the important things, the messages that need to be put across. We're not only talking about this, but we're actually going to do something. And that's very, very important. I mean, there's been many frameworks put forward by the U.S., but not really much action, whereas China has, with the Belt and Road Initiative and many other initiatives, it actually puts money to work, and there are real benefits that can be, tangible benefits that can be seen. Very important today.
Well, dear guest, we'll be getting back to you on this. Let's get more updates. China and France have issued several joint statements and signed multiple cooperation documents during President Xi Jinping's state visit to France.
Noting they are both permanent members of the UN Security Council, China and France condemn all violations of international humanitarian law in their joint statement on the Middle East situation. They call for an immediate ceasefire and the provision of humanitarian aid to Gaza, and urge all parties to exercise restraint to avoid further escalation of tensions. President Xi and President Macron expressed support for a two-state solution for Israel and Palestine, recognizing it as the path towards lasting peace. In addition, they reiterate support for diplomatic efforts to address the Iran nuclear issue and emphasize the importance of maritime safety in the Red Sea and the Gulf of Aden. They call for observing an Olympic truce during the 2024 Summer Games as an opportunity for conflict resolution while respecting international law. On the environment, China and France issued a joint statement on protecting biodiversity and marine ecosystems. The two countries reiterate their commitments to realizing the goals of the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework, as well as other environmental conventions they participate in. China and France are committed to protecting and restoring marine ecosystems and marine biodiversity to boost environmental multilateralism and call on other countries to do the same. They are also committed to fighting against illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing and enhancing management in such areas. The joint statement says the two sides vow to reduce marine pollution and realize the UN Sustainable Development Goal 14, which addresses the key challenges of ocean health. On AI and global governance, the joint statement says China and France believe it is crucial to boost AI's development and security, to push for suitable global governance. They realize the risks brought by the rapid development of AI technology and intend to take measures to contain such risks. The statement stresses the importance of international cooperation on the basis of respecting national sovereignty and international security and stability. In November 2023, China and France signed the bilateral declaration, the first international agreement in the AI field. The joint statement says China is willing to attend the AI Safety Summit hosted by France in 2025 and invites France to attend this year's World Artificial Intelligence Conference to be held in China. The two countries also issued a joint statement on agricultural cooperation, vowing to boost joint efforts in the wine industry and poultry. They will also further cooperate in farming and exchanges of young talents.
Chinese President Xi Jinping's visit to France has also resulted in the signing of 18 cooperation agreements between government agencies from the two sides. Agreements cover areas such as aviation, agriculture, people-to-people exchanges, green development and SME cooperation. The move comes as China and France seek to encourage two-way investment, underlining their commitment to providing a sound business environment for companies from both sides. The two countries are also expecting more opportunities to promote education, sports, film and TV, youth and subnational cooperation as this year marks the China-France Year of Culture and Tourism. Chinese President Xi Jinping has called for closer business ties between Beijing and Paris. He made remarks at the 6th meeting of the China-France Business Council in Paris. Chen Chen has more details.
"2024 marks the 60th anniversary of diplomatic ties between Beijing and Paris." Addressing the China-France Business Council, President Xi reviewed the two countries' long-standing friendship. He said after 6 decades of growing ties, the two countries have remained win-win partners and their economies have become closely intertwined and highly symbiotic. Xi Jinping said China will expand its economic engagements with France. China views France as a priority and trustworthy partner in cooperation. And he pledged that China will import more cheese, ham, wine, and other quality agricultural products from France. He announced that China will extend visa exemption entry for citizens from 12 countries, including France, on short-term visits to China until the end of 2025, a step aiming to boost people-to-people exchanges. As China's relations with France affect its relations with Europe as a whole, President Xi expressed hope that the two countries could jointly deepen mutually beneficial cooperation between China and Europe. He highlighted the importance of China-Europe relations to world peace, stability, and prosperity. And he called for the two sides to enhance political mutual trust and oppose attempts to turn business relations into political, ideological, or security issues. The two sides should instead work with each other on trade, technology, and industrial and supply chains. The Chinese president also vowed to further open up the service sector, including telecommunications and medical services, and open its market wider to create more opportunities for companies from France, Europe, and beyond. Xi Jinping also called for the two countries to jointly tackle global challenges. He said both China and France are permanent members of the UN Security Council, and they should enhance stability in China-France relations to address uncertainties of the world. This would include coordination in the UN and more leadership and support for global governance. He said the two sides should work to promote comprehensive reform of the World Trade Organization and promote a universally beneficial and inclusive economic globalization. He also called for the two sides to step up efforts to address climate change. Xi Jinping said China is upgrading traditional industries, fostering emerging industries, laying the groundwork for future industries, and moving faster to promote new quality productive forces. He said this means more opportunities for companies around the world, including those from France. He also gave his best wishes to the Paris 2024 Olympic Games and China-France cooperation in a new era. Chen, CGTN.
Well, Mr. Tangen, earlier we were just talking about the outcomes so far from President Xi Jinping's state visit to France, talking about joint statements. You just said these are the subjects the two sides agreed upon. So still focusing on the very first one, the joint statement on the Middle East situation. What has the two sides agreed on? And we know that Hamas just accepted a truce deal proposed by mediators in Qatar.
Well, I'm going to agree with Dr. Jin. This is more political. What they're trying to do is support each other's positions, talking about the responsibility of being on the P5. But this is a very difficult thing to say directly. I mean, right now the U.S. is supplying the bullets and bombs that are being used by Israel to perpetuate what many see as a genocide. She did not ask Macron to put pressure on the U.S. because they respect you to end that. So what they're trying to do is just say, look, there's only one way to solve that, and that is to get the people at the table. Everyone thinks that a two-state solution is necessary. They mentioned that in their communique, and that's really where they want to go. But it takes everybody to get there, and right now it's uncertain whether Netanyahu, who has promised the right-wing side of his party that he will take Rafah by armed force. And they have said, if you don't do that, we will collapse your government. So he's in a difficult position.
And this time, Dr. Jing, protecting biodiversity is also high on the agenda for the two sides. It's one of the joint statements is dedicated to this subject. And also, we noticed that in the 18 cooperation documents signed this time, several are also related. For example, dealing with climate change, new energy, sustainable energy and environmental protection. What's the momentum right now for the two sides to cooperate on this particular subject?
Actually, if you're looking back into the history of China-France cooperation on climate change and also on biodiversity issues, you could see we have laid a very solid basis for the bilateral cooperations. And today, you talk about new momentum of the cooperation. I think the climate change challenge has become more and more obvious, and all of us have been, deeply affected by the challenges. So it's important for China and France to continue the cooperation in the areas. And today, both China and Europe and France have set the direction for the green transition. That is directly related to the climate change issues, which will lay a very solid basis and also provide new momentum for the two sides to cooperate on the issues. It's very important, actually, for the two sides to see the comparative advantages of each side in the green industry areas. I think that is why President Xi actually during the meeting, trilateral meetings, to emphasize that what kind of a perspective we should take for the green sector cooperation.
So, Mr. Tangen, going green could also be good business opportunities for both sides, right?
Yes, it is, but there's a sticking point there. I mean, China's ability to mass produce, economies of scale are making it the cheap provider. Now, ordinarily, everyone would be like, great, we can transition much more cheaply, save money, not raise inflation, this type of thing. But you do have some countries who are saying, well, no, you're producing too much, you're suppressing our industries and things like that.
Having said that, what happened to basic market rules?
Well, that's the whole point. When it was the opposite way around, when it was Europe and America who was dominating the world with production and economies of scale, that's just natural superiority and the market working its magic and things like that. But now when the shoe is on the other foot, it is. But there is a way for both sides to cooperate. France has tremendous intellectual reserves. This is a human resource area because you need to continually improve it. And you'll notice that in the communiques they were talking about more cooperation, aerospace and in green technology. So this is a way in which they can participate by having a part of the intellectual property, and China can do what it does best, which is produce these things at the lowest possible cost, because it might be a choice for Europe whether they want to pay more even though their economies aren't great. But when you start talking about other areas of the world, Africa, places in South America, places that can't afford it, it is absolutely necessary, the green transition, to have a cheap alternative.
And on the larger picture, we also noticed that in recent several years, Europe have been expressing this concern about the structure, the balance of trade with China. So from this time's visit and the trilateral meeting, have you got any messages on how China will address this European concern, Doctor?
Actually, we have seen from the joint statement signed by the two leaders that both sides will further open their markets for the cooperation. You're talking about imbalanced economic relationship. I think it mainly refers to the trade relations. But actually, if we put it into a more broader picture, that is, if we combine the trade relations with the investment relations, that will be more balanced. If we took a more open attitude towards Chinese investment in Europe. Actually, if you're looking at the experiences of China and Europe economic cooperations, we have ever had a very successful case. That is, we bring in the European investment in China, they want the benefits here, and that also promotes Chinese own development as well. And today, as regards to the green sectors, whether we could looking into the possibilities of to expand Chinese green sector investment in Europe, that could definitely rebalance the economic relationship. But here is a great but, that is the European side today expressed concerns as regards to the Chinese increasing investment in Europe. I have heard a lot of complaints from Chinese business communities.
Right,
there.
we'll be talking about this very soon, dear guests. Now let's get more updates. Chinese President Xi Jinping will soon arrive in the southwestern French town of Tarbes. Tarbes is the second stop of President Xi Jinping's state visit to France. Our reporter Zhao Yunfei has more details from Tarbes Airport.
I'm at the airport of Dac, or Tarbes, a small town in southwest of France. Now, compared with two previous days with packed agenda in Paris, the agenda for today is a little bit relaxed. Now, Tarbes is known for its breathtaking view and ski resorts where the French president will visit annually because his late grandmother lived nearby. And this unique special planning gives a little bit personal one as the French president planned, as he wants to build the ties with his Chinese counterpart.
And we'll keep you updated on that. More news regarding a state visit to France by Chinese President Xi Jinping. A major Chinese art exhibition has opened in Paris to drive cultural exchanges between China and France. Titled From Beijing to Paris, Olympic Tour of Chinese and French Artists, the exhibition will showcase over 200 works by over 100 leading Chinese artists. The event is jointly hosted by China Media Group, the French National Olympic and Sports Committee, the Ligue de Football Professionnel, and several French art organizations. CMG President Shen Haixiong and leaders of other host organizations attended the opening ceremony on Monday. The event will open to the public through May the 18th. And that's it for this edition of The World Today on CGTN. I'm Pandong in Beijing. Stay tuned.
The Vibe, French ink. Expat philosophy teacher turns hand to Chinese ink paintings that touch on ephemeral nature of life. Dragon scale bookbinder. Craftsman delights bookworms with raft of techniques plucked from pages of history. Warp speed innovation. Experts discuss how sci-fi and cutting-edge tech feed off one another to keep appetites whetted. Snapshots of a nation. Photographers from China and UK share cross-cultural views in annual university-sponsored competition. Hello and welcome to The Vibe on CGTN. I'm your host Leonie Zoomer in Beijing. Thanks for tuning in. Here at The Vibe, we're your go-to destination for all things art and culture, keeping you in the loop with the trendiest happenings every weekday. Let's step into the artistic universe of French professor Benoît Vermandet at Fudan University. His exhibition showcases Chinese ink paintings that capture the essence of constant change. Join us as we explore how Vermandet's art embodies the fluid dance of life.
Over 60 paintings by Benoît Vermandet are now being exhibited at Fudan University. For the past decades, the French philosopher has been trying to capture the process of how things are constantly changing.
Il y a un recueil du poète français Victor Ségalen qui s'appelle Stèles. Et donc il parle de la Chine comme un espace qui est ponctué par des stèles. Mais pour moi, ces peintures sont plutôt comme les vagues de la mer. Elles participent au mouvement, si vous voulez, de la mer, du désert ou de l'existence. Donc c'est une façon de dire mes peintures ne sont pas là pour durer toujours, pour être là comme des points fixes, mais plutôt pour participer au mouvement incessant de l'existence.
Heavily influenced by French artists Paul Cézanne and Henri Matisse, Vermandet's paintings incorporate elements of Chinese ink painting. Although he has been living in Shanghai for the past 15 years, he first came to China in 1987. He then started dabbling in Chinese painting techniques when conducting field studies in Taiwan and Sichuan in the 1990s.
Eh bien, je pense que mes peintures sont totalement immergées dans la relation entre l'art chinois, la tradition de l'art chinois et la tradition de l'art notamment français. Parce que c'est la Chine qui m'a donné le courage de peindre, parce que quand j'étais petit, je n'osais pas peindre parce que je faisais des taches, des points. Mais en Chine, quand j'ai fait la calligraphie, on m'a dit les taches sont belles.
His paintings reflect a lot of Chinese ink painting techniques with Chinese elements including water and mountains. So you can see that he's very fond of Chinese culture. But at the same time, there are also some clear Western elements with a sense of design, such as the bird over there and the black and white elephant.
The exhibition runs until April 25th. Wu Xutong, SS for CGTN, Shanghai.
Zhang Xiaodong's unique world of handmade books has captivated audiences globally, earning him international acclaim and multiple awards. But what makes his ancient book-binding techniques so enchanting, and why do they remain relevant today? Ji Jie has the answers for us.
A long piece of paper is used as a foundation, and pages are pasted on it in a sophisticated order. When you roll the paper, it becomes a hand scroll, and when you open it, the pages tilt up, fluttering when a gust of wind blows in. This is how Chinese depicted the dragon scale bound books during the Tang Dynasty.
通过他的描述，我们迅速的能够在脑海当中形成一个画面。哇，龙鳞状真的好优美！它不是一个静态的，它原来是一个动态的，它还有一种风的吹过你耳边的那个沙沙的那个声音。所以我觉得龙鳞状其实它不仅仅是一个有着1000多年历史的东西，它还是一个书籍的未来的带有科幻色彩的作品。
The century-old craftsmanship dates back more than 1,000 years. But back then, dragon scale bound books were reserved only for royalty and highly educated elites. 40-year-old Zhang Xiaodong has been working hard to resurrect this ancient bookbinding technique for 15 years. From papermaking to movable type printing to the printing press, people have long received wisdom from the written word. Over 1,000 years ago, the dragon scale binding technique was a major breakthrough on the basis of hand scroll style, as well as a predecessor of modern books. That simple act of turning a page made all the difference in the world.
龙鳞装的叶子鳞次相凑的粘贴，其实大大就缩短了这个手绢的长度。举一个小小的例子，我做的第一部龙鳞装叫《龙鳞装32段金刚经》，那个作品呢，如果是手绢呢，它的长度要70多米，但是如果把它做成现在的龙鳞装，龙鳞叶片的部分呢，只有4.6米左右，其实是一个极大的浓缩。但是就阅读概念来讲的话，它通过翻阅它鳞次相凑的领口，它可以露出小小的文字的内容。这样的话，它会像一个检索的字典一样，它可以去翻动它。我认为它是一个工艺跟科学的进步。
Today, Zhang continues to cut and fold thin pages of a story into precise sheets and layers them on top of one another as his ancestors did in ancient times. He carefully places chapters into frames, and together, scales are bound to form a complete image. And that's when the visuals come in.
因为我觉得人读画的时候，要比读文字要先一步。 我们先去脑海当中形成画像，形成空间，形成这个影像镜头吧，进而去走入它的文字的时候，会非常的更容易的去理解它文字的内涵。我开始试着在鳞次相凑的领口，我觉得这是一个空间啊，这个空间如果不用就白白浪费掉了。虽然是每一条的话，可能也就有2厘米，或者有的是1.6厘米这样子，但是已经够了。比如说我们 拼掉100张、200张的时候，也有很长的这样的一个空间了。我觉得这个够了，完全可以承载很精美的绘画。
In 2008, Zhang successfully completed his first brand new handmade dragon scale bound book, Diamond Sutra. This gigantic 8-volume A Dream of Red Mansions is another surprise Zhang gifted to the world. It's called Jinlong bookbinding. Jing refers to the menstrual fold used in temples in the Tang Dynasty, and Long the dragon scale bookbinding. Inspired by 3 ancient elites in Chinese history, Zhang combined the 2 binding styles into one. That would be a super cool cup of tea with a beautiful sense of romanticism. I give it a try to experience the joy of the ancients for the first time, turning the pages of a dragon scale bound book. Like the 0 and 1 in binary, the original code for constructing the virtual world, words or images were historically seen as the original code of people connecting with nature. And these particular codes have led Zhang Xiaodong to a whole new 2.5-dimensional world where dragon scale bookbinding meets contemporary art.
Shanghai is setting fashion trends that resonate not just within China, but globally. French designer Luc Bourneau has been drawing inspiration from the city's unique East meets West vibe for over a decade.
Luc Bourneau has been inspired by fashion since childhood. He first came to China as a teacher in 1998 after working in fashion in the US and Europe, at the time when China's fashion industry was just emerging.
It was quite a strong impression because at the time it was mainly about production. It was, at the time was really the biggest thing was the made in China. I was actually teaching Chinese to understand how to create.
He says he's witnessed profound transformations on China's fashion scene.
I saw the evolution from made in China to create in China, which is like amazing to see that. To see all those companies, all those brands who want to be creative in China and proud to be Chinese creative thinker. And what made me stay was that at the time the market was exceptional in China, the growth and the industry was really booming. And it gave me a lot of opportunity to express myself and to develop my creativity with them and to also grow with the growth of the Chinese industry.
In 2018, he launched his own consultancy, collaborating with different brands as China's fashion industry reached maturity.
In cities like Shanghai or Beijing or the first-tier city, we see really the fashion is very interesting. I mean, I know designers from other countries, Western countries, who come to Shanghai now to study the market and to learn things and to look at people on the streets. So that's very a different way of dressing up now.
The interaction between Chinese and French fashion is seen as enriching both cultures.
French designers' ability to weave their culture and global perspective into their designs offers great insights. We Chinese designers are learning to merge our traditional heritage with contemporary lifestyles.
Luc Bono says he feels enriched by his experiences in China, and the most rewarding aspect of his life here are the deep cultural insights he's gained. And he says there's always more to explore. Lingnan, CGTN, Shanghai.
We keep on looking to France. French bakers created the, let me have a look, world's longest baguette last Sunday at about 140 meters, reclaiming a record for one of the nation's best-known symbols seized by Italy 5 years ago. The baguette, about 235 times longer than a traditional French stick, was made in Suresnes in the suburbs of Paris during an event for the French Confederation of Bakers and Pastry Chefs. The previous record of 132 meters was set in the Italian city of Como in June 2019. Parts of Sunday's baguette were shared with the public. China and Hungary mark the 75th anniversary of diplomatic relations, highlighted by the unique role of the Hungarian-Chinese bilingual school in Budapest in bridging the linguistic divide. We hear from students about their bilingual education and their aspirations to study in China soon.
Founded in September 2004, the Hungarian-Chinese bilingual school located in Budapest is the only full-time school in Central and Eastern Europe that teaches in Chinese as well as in the local language. Fedora Felici, who is 18, is currently studying at the school. She will be attending the university in China in the coming fall.
It was hard at the beginning, but I would say that since I have been learning this language for 12 years now, it has become my second native language.
Currently, the school has 12 grades and 20 classes with more than 530 students attending.
This school is unique in Europe because it's a state-run institution. It's not just a weekend school, as the students can learn Chinese by going to 2 schools every day.
The school has witnessed the friendship between Hungary and China bloom as Chinese President Xi Jinping, who was then China's vice president, visited the school in October 2009. President Xi Jinping watched poetry recitations and traditional Chinese martial arts performed by the students. He emphasized that the two countries need to enhance mutual understanding through strengthening cultural exchanges, and the students represent the hopes for future cooperation. Loretta Grove, who also got accepted for studying in China in the fall, wants to pursue a career in public relations.
It's a really big thing, so I think I'm going to actually realize it when I arrive there. I'm still in awe, honestly. I'm just so happy.
The students are immersed in traditional Chinese culture during their study at the school. through calligraphy and even performing Chinese tea ceremonies.
Well, it was more of a dream, and now it's going to come true. This year, 10 students will be getting their higher education in China. I hope that they will be able to make it, and that the language skills that they have acquired over the years here will be enough to enable them acquire different professions.
Before the Spring Festival in 2023, 2 students, whose Chinese names are Hu Lingyue and Song Zhixiao, wrote a letter to President Xi Jinping and his wife, Professor Peng Liyuan, on behalf of all students in the school. They were studying at the bilingual school at that time.
Song Zhixiao and I were awarded the ambassador scholarships for the second time. We felt so happy and excited about it. We want to share our happiness, so we wrote a letter to President Xi.
In the letter, they also spoke about their experience studying Chinese and also expressed their wish to study in Chinese universities.
2023年1月份的时候，那时候就是
We celebrated the Chinese Spring Festival to share our plans with the president. We wrote that letter.
Chinese President Xi Jinping replied, he and his wife were glad to hear from the Hungarian students during the Spring Festival of the Year of the Rabbit. And he still remembered the time he visited the school in 2009. He said he would like to give the students a thumbs up for their long studies in Chinese and their commitment towards making contributions to China-Hungary friendship. In his reply, President Xi welcomed students to study at Chinese universities and become envoys of the 2 countries. Now, the 2 girls are studying in Beijing. They arrive in the Chinese capital in the fall and began their journey to explore Chinese history and culture. The girls say they have embraced the opportunities the language has enabled them to.
I've started to learn Chinese since first grade. I want to come to China personally and make friends with the people here. I also want to experience its culture and history.
就是感受一下中国和中国文化历史。我非常喜欢北京的名胜古迹。
I love the historical sites in Beijing, especially the summer palace that we toured.
尤其我很喜欢颐和园。
President Xi says Hungary was one of the first countries to recognize and establish diplomatic relations with New China. The traditional friendship between the 2 countries has a long history. No matter how the international situation change, China-Hungary relations have always thrived and developed. The students say through their study, they hope to seize the opportunity and push the China-Hungary Comprehensive Strategic Partnership to new heights. 陈子源 CGTN Beijing.
Coming up next, Technophile's Guide to the Galaxy. Beijing Forum discusses prophetic nature of sci-fi and symbiotic links to new tech. Snapshots of a nation. Photographers from China and UK share cross-cultural views in annual university-sponsored competition.
Facing the unknown is always difficult. In a world in turmoil, it's easy to lose orientation. But when the storms come, we have to see the possibilities, reinvent, find new opportunities, discover a path forward. CGTN, see the difference.
You're watching The Vibe. Good to have you with us because we have more stories for you. Beijing hosted the China Science Fiction Convention 2024, where our reporter Yang Yan engaged with international experts and scientists. Together, they explored the synergies between technological innovation and science fiction.
Today, this forum brings together 150 elite global minds, experts, scientists, and sci-fi creators to explore the intersections of tech progress, ethics, and imagination. They are leveraging the creative spark of science fiction to push the boundaries of technological innovations. Vladimir Norov, former Secretary General of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, emphasized the crucial role of global cooperation in driving technological development.
And that's why it is important cooperation, international cooperation, as in innovating new types of these technologies and how you can benefit from these. It is needed a common, special sharing of knowledge, sharing of experience, and common such educations.
Leading robotics specialist Antonio Fersoli shared his insights from the forefront of robotics research, asserting that technology and science fiction dynamically enhance and inspire one another.
Yeah, it's really important what science fiction can make in terms of new ideas, in particular now because robotics is becoming to reach a level that was described in science fiction 30 years, 40 years ago. So we need to have some view of what will happen next.
Sci-fi writer Chen Qiufan shares similar sentiments.
我觉得科技的不断进步，其实对科幻创作有2方面的一个，可以说是动力，也可以说是一个障碍。对，一个动力就是我们可以看到，科幻创作一直从历史上各种科技的创新、发明一些新的理论，获取源源不断的灵感。另一方面，我们可以看到这个人工智能。日新月异的发展，所以我们一直在不断的更新我们的一些观念。你要符合现在大家对 AI 的一些理解，但是你要超越现实，你要去想象一些更先进的、能力更强大的一些 AI 的形态，它会是什么样子？所以这其实对科幻作家又提出了更高的要求。
Stanford's Wang Weiqi, a big data scientist and sci-fi writer, addressed the challenges in taking Chinese sci-fi global. He emphasized the dual hurdles of accurate translations, feeding Western contexts, and overcoming cultural differences.
We have and we are proud of our Chinese and Asian culture, the Oriental culture, so to speak. But the Western culture is very different. So how to preserve our culture proudly, but at the same time put it in the work and let foreign Western reader accept it and appreciate it. That's an even bigger challenge because everybody, especially in the Western world, people think in a very different way. They have a different logic. They have a different sense of taste, so to speak. So that is an even bigger challenge.
Yang Yan, CGTN, Beijing.
Stage performances, particularly dance dramas, are increasingly captivating Chinese audiences. Young directors and choreographers are at the forefront, striving to preserve the essence of classic pieces.
The emergence of hit productions like A Dream of Red Mansions, Li Bai, and Poetic Dance, The Journey of a Legendary Landscape Painting, has solidified dance dramas as a mainstay in the performance industry. Newly acclaimed works like Wing Chun are also telegraphing the enduring vitality of traditional Chinese culture.
这些舞者们，他们有全新的创作理念，他们努力地去实现双创，就是优秀传统文化的创造性转换创新性发展。
Through innovative forms of expression, dance drama creators have facilitated the modernization of old traditions, creating works that attract younger audiences.
有的好几个舞者呢都是自带流量，我想呢，舞剧艺术发展到现在这样的一个状态，是非常欣喜的。我认为非常非常重要的一件事情就是还要沉下心来，认真的揣摩 艺术的规律，真正的深入生活，并且呢沉浸之中又能跳出来，我觉得这个呢是非常重要的。
Dance drama fever has given rise to a spate of hit productions that prominently revolve around themes tied to traditional Chinese culture, attracting hordes of younger people. Many spectators among this age demographic admit to rewatching their favorites multiple times, while also engaging in discussions on social media platforms and showing their appreciation for the performances on stage. 张梦圆 CGTN.
This year's photography competition, jointly organised by China's Yunnan University and the UK's University of Manchester, showcases the theme of daily rituals. Let's take a look.
Everyday routines in the UK and in China, captured in an image. Daily Ritual, the theme of this year's annual photography competition, held jointly by the University of Manchester and China's Yunnan University.
The goal of these photographs is to help ordinary Chinese and ordinary Britons see themselves in the eyes of each other.
Well, some of these images feature commuting, which of course is a daily ritual for millions of us around the world. Let me show you this one. Workers waiting to go home in China, lined up at the end of the day. And right next door we have this image of a lone cyclist captured in Salford. That's very close to Manchester. And finally, this romantic moment of tenderness on the Guangzhou metro system. Three striking images, very different, but highlighting those differences and the similarities between the cultures. Among 30 highly commended, there were 2 overall winners, one from the UK and one from China. Love in a Small Town, which shows a cleaner working under the image of an umbrella, was submitted by Hongwei Zhang, who sent a message of thanks.
I'm incredibly excited and delighted by my win.
The UK winning picture showed a group of women dealing with mental and other health challenges through cold water swimming during the COVID lockdown.
We're all linked. Everybody needs that little community to be together, to say how they're feeling. And just the same as them ladies there, they needed them people as well, their little community. So it doesn't matter where you're from, who you are, how rich or how poor, you still need your little group of people.
Lending support, China's Consul General in Manchester said he hoped to see similar projects across British and Chinese universities.
There's a deficit, I would like to say, about knowledge between China and UK. It's true that Chinese people, especially the young people, they can name the football teams, but in China, I doubt there are people in UK they can name the Chinese football teams. We encourage more UK young students to go to China, to travel to China, to know more about China.
Organisers say the competition is part of continuing efforts to integrate Manchester's nearly 9,000 Chinese students into UK life.
We tend to hear about conflicts and clashes between, say, China and the UK. And so the focus in the day-to-day is on difference. It's this kind of framework that overemphasizes difference, which in my view is dangerous. And so we need to be reminded of our common humanity.
Catherine Drew, CGTN, Manchester.
And we say goodbye for now. I'm Leonie Zoomer from the Capital. Thanks for watching. Stay cultured, stay curious, and stay tuned for more news coming up on CGTN.
Hello, welcome to The World Today on CGTN. Live from Beijing, I'm Pan Dong. We start in diplomacy. Chinese President Xi Jinping has held talks with French President Emmanuel Macron in Paris. The two presidents discussed a wide range of global issues during their meeting on Monday and are exploring opportunities for cooperation in science, culture and sports. Dong Xue has the story.
Chinese President Xi Jinping started his first-day visit to France with a trilateral meeting with the French President Emmanuel Macron and European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen. President Xi said that China always approaches its relations with the European Union from a strategic and long-term perspective and regards Europe as an important dimension in its major country diplomacy and an important partner on its path toward Chinese modernization. It's been 5 years since the Chinese head of state has visited France, and this year marks the 60th anniversary of diplomatic relations between the two countries. China and France hope to advance their cooperation even further during President Xi's visit in terms of trade and investment, which are very important to each other. France is China's third largest trading partner with the EU, and China is France's largest trading partner in Asia. While deepening cooperation in traditional areas, Beijing says the two sides are actively expanding and tapping cooperation potential in emerging areas such as green industry, clean energy, climate change, as well as artificial intelligence. President Xi said, as two important forces in the world, China and the EU should adhere to their partnership, positioning dialogue and cooperation, deepen strategic communication, enhance mutual strategic trust, gather strategic consensus, carry out strategic cooperation, promote stable and healthy development of China-European relations. Both France and the EU hope to enhance dialogue and cooperation with China. The EU refuses the logic of decoupling and welcomes investment and cooperation by Chinese companies in Europe. President Macron said that the EU hopes to step up cooperation with China and jointly safeguard the security and stability of value chains and supply chains in Europe. France also wishes to work with China closely to address global challenges such as climate change and marine biodiversity. On Monday, Chinese President Xi had a very productive day where multiple deals were signed and the two sides agreed to continue strengthen relations. China also announced that the visa-free scheme to France will be extended to the end of 2025, a move to promote people-to-people exchanges as to help maintain the stable and healthy development of bilateral relations. And that is what President Xi called the China-France spirit, one that features independence, mutual understanding, foresight, mutual benefit, and win-win cooperation. Dong Xue, CGTN, Paris.
China and France have issued several joint statements and signed multiple cooperation documents during President Xi Jinping's state visit.
Noting they are both permanent members of the UN Security Council, China and France condemn all violations of international humanitarian law in their joint statement on the Middle East situation. They call for an immediate ceasefire and the provision of humanitarian aid to Gaza and urge all parties to exercise restraint to avoid further escalation of tensions. President Xi and President Macron expressed support for a two-state solution for Israel and Palestine, recognizing it as the path towards lasting peace. In addition, they reiterate support for diplomatic efforts to address the Iran nuclear issue and emphasize the importance of maritime safety in the Red Sea and the Gulf of Aden. They call for observing an Olympic truce during the 2024 Summer Games as an opportunity for conflict resolution while respecting international law. On the environment, China and France issued a joint statement on protecting biodiversity and marine ecosystems. The two countries reiterate their commitments to realizing the goals of the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework, as well as other environmental conventions they participate in. China and France are committed to protecting and restoring marine ecosystems and marine biodiversity to boost environmental multilateralism and call on other countries to do the same. They are also committed to fighting against illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing and enhancing management in such areas. The joint statement says the two sides vow to reduce marine pollution and realize the UN Sustainable Development Goal 14, which addresses the key challenges of ocean health. On AI and global governance, the joint statement says China and France believe it is crucial to boost AI's development and security, to push for suitable global governance. They realize the risks brought by the rapid development of AI technology and intend to take measures to contain such risks. The statement stresses the importance of international cooperation on the basis of respecting national sovereignty and international security and stability. In November 2023, China and France signed the Bilateral Declaration, the first international agreement in the AI field. The joint statement says China is willing to attend the AI Safety Summit hosted by France in 2025 and invites France to attend this year's World Artificial Intelligence Conference to be held in China. The two countries also issued a joint statement on agricultural cooperation, vowing to boost joint efforts in the wine industry and poultry. They will also further cooperate in farming and exchanges of young talents.
Chinese President Xi Jinping's visit to France has also resulted in the signing of 18 cooperation agreements between government agencies from the two countries. The agreements cover areas such as aviation, agriculture, people-to-people exchanges, green development and SME cooperation. The move comes as China and France seek to encourage two-way investment, underlining their commitment to providing a sound business environment for companies from the other side. The two countries are also expecting more opportunities to promote education, sports, film and TV, youth and subnational cooperation, as this year marks the China-France Year of Culture and Tourism. Chinese President Xi Jinping will soon arrive in the southwestern French town of Tarbes. Tarbes is the second stop of President Xi Jinping's state visit to France. Our reporter Zhao Yingfei has more details from Tarbes Airport.
I'm at the airport of Dac, or Tarbes, a small town in southwest of France. Now, compared with two previous days with packed agenda in Paris, the agenda for today is a little bit relaxed. Now, Tarbes is known for its breathtaking view and ski resorts where the French president will visit annually because his late grandmother lived nearby. And this unique special planning gives a little bit personal one as the French president planned, as he wants to build the ties with his Chinese counterpart.
Now let's find out more where Tarbes is and what it's famous for. Tarbes is in the Occitanie region of southwestern France. Its picturesque town of snow-capped mountains is the gateway to the Pyrenees, which lie on the French-Spanish border. Top-notch ski resorts are just a half-hour's drive from Tarbes. It's also the headquarters of Tarmac Aerosave, an aircraft recycling and maintenance company. The firm has partnered with China's southwestern city of Chengdu to build China's first aircraft life cycle services center. Now, for more insight into the state visit of Chinese President Xi Jinping to France, we're joined in the studio by Dr. Jing Ling and Mr. Ina Tangen. So, still focusing on the agenda right now, President Xi Jinping is about to arrive at Tarbes, a town in southwestern France. We noticed that in recent years, when the head of states of the two countries visiting each other, it's kind of... Now this just came in. Chinese President Xi Jinping has arrived at the southwestern French town of Tarbes. So continue our discussion. Now it's kind of a norm in recent years for the two sides, for the heads of state to visit a second city in each other's country. Why Tarbes this time, Mr. Tangen?
Well, there's a family connection for obviously Macron. His grandmother was there, but this is very important. You want to take somebody that has an emotional, something that's very personal to you, that you know very well. It's an opportunity to establish a connection. Remember, these leaders are bouncing around the world with international travel as well as heavy duties at home. So their ability to really kind of get a feel for each other is very limited. So this is one way to do do it, to compact, take a walk, kind of measure each other's stride, talk about the things that you want to talk, and perhaps there, without all of your subordinates and other people there, you can be kind of one person to another person, people to people diplomacy. I guess it starts at the top.
Oh, exactly. And this reminds us that last year, during President Emmanuel Macron's state visit to China, he went to Guangzhou, the city of Guangzhou, besides the capital, Beijing. Now, talking about building on connections, sometimes it's kind of personal and sometimes it could be historical. Tell us more about that, Dr. Jing.
Yes, I totally agree with the colleagues. Actually, this today it's a kind of norm to have this kind of connection. We're talking about Tarbes. Actually, if you're looking at the background, it reminds us the common culture here in China. That is, we are family. So that will help to build up the close connection between the two presidents. And also, I totally agree with that. The two presidents actually need a kind of example for how the people-to-people exchange should conduct in this kind of a relaxed atmosphere to increase mutual understanding.
As we're talking about this, dear guests, we're watching live footage from Tarbes Airport in southwestern France, where Chinese President Xi Jinping has just arrived at, and this is the second stop of Chinese President Xi Jinping's state visit to France. And as we just heard from our reporters, and we've already talked about this, Tarbes is also the hometown to French President Emmanuel Macron's late grandmother. Yes, Dr. Jing, you were talking about links and family tradition, importance to both sides.
Yes. So the place is where President Macron has spent his childhood. Actually, in Chinese culture, if you bring your guests to your hometown, that's actually brought your relationship much closer compared with the much more official, visit. So this is exactly the ways I think President Macron would like to bring their relationship closer as a with this kind of visit.
Right, as we're talking about this, you're watching live footage from Tarbes in southwestern France. The Chinese President Xi Jinping has just arrived at this southwestern French town for the second stop of his state visit to France. This is live footage from Tarbes Airport. Now, Mr. Tangen, at the earlier introduction of this southwestern French town, we noticed that there is the headquarters of this company, Tarmac Aerosave, is also based there, and it's focusing on aircraft recycling. And on the big picture of bilateral ties, we noticed that aviation is also a key area of cooperation and agreements this time, right?
Yes, actually aviation, airplanes and helicopters are #1 in terms of goods being exported from France to China. So obviously there are a lot of opportunities still there. Every time you sell an aircraft, that's not the end of it. Obviously, you have maintenance issues and all sorts of things. So
Chinese President Xi Jinping's plane is now taxiing at Tarbes Airport in southwestern France. This is a live picture from Tarbes in southwestern France. The plane of Chinese President Xi Jinping is now taxiing on the runway. Chinese President Xi Jinping has just arrived at Tarbes in southwestern France. Tarbes is the second stop of President Xi Jinping's state visit to France, and Tarbes is the hometown of French President Emmanuel Macron's late grandmother. And now Tarbes is in the Occitanie region of southwestern France. This town of snow-capped mountains is the gateway to the Pyrenees, which lie on the French-Spanish border, and top-notch ski resorts are just a half-hour's drive from the town. It's also the headquarters of Tarmac Aerosave, an aircraft recycling and maintenance company and firm has partnered with China's southwestern city of Chengdu to build China's first aircraft life cycle services center. And you're watching live footage from Tarbes Airport. The plane of Chinese President Xi Jinping is taxiing on the runway. Chinese President Xi Jinping has just arrived at the town of Tarbes in southwestern France for the second stop of his state visit to France. And President Xi Jinping's state visit to France began on Sunday. He arrived in Paris, where he was welcomed by French Prime Minister Gabriel Attal there. And on Monday morning, President Xi Jinping attended a trilateral meeting with his French counterpart Emmanuel Macron and European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen in Paris. At that event, he stressed China and EU as two important forces should deepen strategic communication, enhance strategic mutual trust, and make new contributions to world peace and development. And the bilateral meeting between President Xi Jinping and President Macron took place on Monday afternoon, and citing the current transformation and turbulence in the world, President Xi Jinping urged China and France to uphold independence and jointly prevent a new Cold War or bloc confrontation. He also called for win-win cooperation and joint efforts against decoupling. President Macron said France looks forward to closer economic ties and multilateral communication and collaboration with China. Talks also touched upon various topics such as green development, AI technology, and geopolitical conflicts. The two sides have signed 18 cooperation agreements between government agencies, and also 4 joint statements have also been issued after the meeting between the presidents of the two countries. The 4 joint statements are regarding the situation in the Middle East, the cooperation on protecting biodiversity and marine ecosystems, the joint statement on artificial intelligence and its governance, as well as agricultural exchanges and cooperation between the two sides. French President Emmanuel Macron hosted a welcome banquet for President Xi Jinping on Monday, and during the event, Xi Jinping stressed gratitude for the warm hospitality and emphasized the special relationship between China and France. And also, the two presidents attended the closing ceremony of the China-France Business Council. At the event, both sides have stressed the importance of enhancing business cooperation between the two sides and facilitating better investment environment for businesses. You're watching live footage from Tarbes Airport in southwestern France, and Tarbes is in the Occitanie region of southwestern France. It's a town of snow-capped mountains and is the gateway to Pyrenees, which lie on the French-Spanish border. Top-notch ski resorts are just a half-hour's drive from Tarbes, and you can see that it's a beautiful day there. It's also the headquarters of Tarmac Aerosave, an aircraft recycling and maintenance company, as we've been reporting, and we just heard from our guests. Aviation cooperation is a very key sector in Sino-French cooperation. And that firm, based in Tarbes, has just partnered with China's southwestern city of Chengdu to build China's first aircraft life cycle services center. You're watching live footage from Tarbes. Chinese President Xi Jinping has just arrived at this southwestern French town for the second stop of his state visit to France. And Tarbes is the hometown of French President Emmanuel Macron's late grandmother. As we just heard, it's some kind of tradition for Chinese or French presidents to visit another place, a secondary place, during one state visit after formal talks in the capital. For example, in 2019, Chinese President Xi Jinping and French President Emmanuel Macron held informal talks in the French city of Nice. And later that year, the pair spoke while enjoying the scenery at Shanghai's Yuyuan Garden. And last year, during President Macron's state visit to China, the two leaders took a stroll through the Pine Garden in the southern Chinese city of Guangzhou. They also listened to an ancient Chinese melody about friendship. This year, the year 2024, marks the 60th anniversary of China-France diplomatic ties. France is the first major Western nation to formalize diplomatic relations with China. And the relationship has weathered numerous challenges and has benefited both sides and the world as a whole. Chinese President said the unique history of China-France relations has shaped the China-France spirit, featuring independence, mutual understanding, foresight, mutual benefit, and win-win cooperation. You're watching live footage from the southwestern French town of Tarbes. This is Tarbes Airport. Chinese President Xi Jinping has just arrived at the town to start his second stop of the state visit to France. Now, French President Emmanuel Macron has arrived at Tarbes Airport to welcome Chinese President Xi Jinping. Some kind of a tradition for Chinese or French presidents to visit a secondary place during one's state visit after formal talks in the capital. And this time, the formal talks between the two presidents happened on Monday in Paris, in which President Xi Jinping urged China and France to uphold independence and jointly prevent a new Cold War and to defend multilateralism. Now, French President Emmanuel Macron and his wife is at Tarbes Airport to welcome Chinese President Xi Jinping. This is the second stop of President Xi Jinping's state visit to France. We are watching live footage from Tarbes Airport. French President Emmanuel Macron and his wife Brigitte Macron are now at the airport to welcome Chinese President Xi Jinping and his wife Peng Liyuan. Tarbes in southwestern France is the hometown of President Emmanuel Macron's late grandmother, and this is the very first time for French President Emmanuel Macron to invite a foreign leader to visit the hometown. It's some kind of tradition for Chinese or French presidents to visit another place during one's state visit after formal talks in a capital. And this time, the visit to Tarbes is of extra significance. As we just mentioned, it's the hometown of French President Emmanuel Macron's late grandmother. And this is the very first time for President Macron to invite a foreign leader to visit this very cherished place in his memory. We're watching live footage from Tarbes Airport. Chinese President Xi Jinping has just arrived at a southwestern French town to start the second stop of his state visit to France. And French President Emmanuel Macron and his wife Brigitte Macron are at the airport to welcome Chinese President Xi Jinping and his wife Peng Liyuan. This town in southwestern France bears special significance to President Emmanuel Macron. It's the hometown of his late grandmother, a very cherished place in his memory indeed. Now, before his arrival at Tarbes, Chinese President Xi Jinping met with his French counterpart Emmanuel Macron and European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen in Paris for a trilateral meeting. And after that, a bilateral meeting between President Xi Jinping and President Emmanuel Macron took place on Monday afternoon. President Xi Jinping called for win-win cooperation and joint efforts against the decoupling. And President Macron said France looks forward to close economic ties and multilateral communication and collaboration with China. The talks on Monday also touched upon various topics such as green development, AI technology, and geopolitical conflicts. The two sides have signed 18 cooperation agreements between government agencies, and 4 joint statements were issued after this bilateral meeting between President Xi Jinping and President Macron. You're watching live footage from Tarbes Airport in southwestern France. Chinese President Xi Jinping has just arrived at this French town for the second stop of his state visit to France. As we just mentioned, Tarbes is the hometown of French President Emmanuel Macron's late grandmother, and this is the very first time for President Macron to invite a foreign leader to visit this very cherished place in his memory. So this also adds extra significance to this second stop for President Xi Jinping in France at this time. As we heard, it's a very beautiful town of snow-capped mountains, and it's the gateway to the Pyrenees, which lie on the French-Spanish border, and the town of Tarbes is in the Occitanie region in southwest France. This is the plane of Chinese President Xi Jinping and the Chinese delegation. And the town of Tarbes is also the headquarters of Tarmac Aerosol, an aircraft recycling and maintenance company. As we just mentioned, aviation is a key sector for China and France to cooperate, and the firm has partnered with China's southwestern city of Chengdu to build China's first aircraft life cycle services center. And we know that Airbus, which headquartered in Toulouse, has a very big manufacturing and assembly plant in the northern Chinese city of Tianjin, very close to Beijing. The door has just opened, and we're expecting Chinese President Xi Jinping to exit the plane. You're watching live footage from Tarbes Airport in southwestern France. Chinese President Xi Jinping has arrived at the French town, and French President Emmanuel Macron and his wife Brigitte Macron are to welcome Chinese President Xi Jinping and his wife Peng Liyuan. You're watching live footage from Tarbes in southwestern France. French President Emmanuel Macron and his wife Brigitte Macron are to welcome Chinese President Xi Jinping and his wife. This is the second stop of Chinese President Xi Jinping's state visit to France. And this is also the first time for French President Emmanuel Macron to invite a foreign leader to the hometown of his late grandmother. You're watching live footage from Tarbes in southwestern France. French President Emmanuel Macron and his wife Brigitte are to welcome Chinese President Xi Jinping and his wife Peng Liyuan. And Tarbes is the capital of the Haute-Pyrénées department in southwestern France's Occitanie region. The town attracts tourists with its beautiful scenery, rich historic culture, and ski resorts. Tarbes' major industries include electrical and mechanical engineering plants and aircraft works. It also serves as a commercial and administrative center for entrepreneurs. French President Emmanuel Macron and his wife Brigitte are at the airport to welcome Chinese President Xi Jinping. You're watching live footage coming from Tarbes Airport. And guards of honor are also lined up to welcome China's head of state. You're watching live footage from Tarbes Airport in southwestern France. And President Xi Jinping's state visit to France began on Sunday, and on Monday morning he attended a trilateral meeting with his French counterpart Emmanuel Macron and European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, and then a bilateral meeting between President Xi and Emmanuel Macron took place on Monday afternoon. This is the second stop of Chinese President Xi Jinping's state visit to France. This is Tarbes Airport. You're watching live footage right now. Chinese President Xi Jinping and his wife Peng Liyuan are exiting the plane, and they are welcomed by French President Emmanuel Macron and his wife Brigitte at Tarbes Airport. You're watching live footage. Chinese President Xi Jinping and his wife Peng Liyuan are now welcomed by French President Emmanuel Macron and his wife Brigitte at Tarbes Airport. Now, the two first ladies are greeting each other as the two heads of state meet again at hometown of French President Emmanuel Macron's late grandmother. And Tarbes is indeed a very cherished place for President Macron, and this is the very first time for President Emmanuel Macron to invite a foreign leader to this very cherished place in his memory. We're watching live footage from Tarbes Airport. French President Emmanuel Macron and his wife now welcoming Chinese President Xi Jinping and his wife Peng Liyuan at the airport. Now, Tarbes is the capital of the entrepreneurs department in southwestern France's Occitanie region. The town attracts tourists with its beautiful scenery, as we can tell. It's beautiful weather there, a little bit windy. And now, French President Emmanuel Macron is introducing President Xi Jinping to this locality and to some officials, the French officials at the airport, to welcome Chinese President Xi Jinping. The two presidents now walking together. This is the second stop of President Xi Jinping's state visit to France. So guests, we just witnessed the arrival of President Xi Jinping to the town of Tarbes. Mr. Tangen, earlier you were talking about building on connections, not only by political means, but also by these visits to a secondary place, a place with special significance, whether it's personal, historical, cultural. And as we just came to aware that this is the very first time for French President Emmanuel Macron to invite a foreign leader to this very cherished place in his memory. We know it's the hometown of his late grandmother. What does this tell in terms of ties between the two heads of state and ties between the two countries?
Well, if you were watching as they were greeting, you can see clearly the body language is very friendly. Peng Yuan and his wife, both of them greeted each other very warmly. There were smiles exchanged. They touched each other's arms. Macron, of course, kissed her hand, which is a very generous gesture on the French side. But you can see they were very close. They were very comfortable. There was no stiffness. They weren't like, what do I do now, and that type of thing. They seemed very happy. And this is the way that you start a kind of introduction. I mean, this is the way things were done when it was kings and queens, when it was titans of industries. You would have people to your summer places, to your special places, where you could really get to know each other, drop all of the pretenses, put everything aside, and just show your personal side, relax a little bit. And this is really important in today's environment, because if there is a crisis, your leader has to be able to call the other leader and have a real understanding of what's going on. And there's got to be a trust level. Do I, in essence, trust you? Because we live in a world today where countries don't trust each other. So it's really important that the leaders do, or at least have some idea about each other.
Now, what's your reading into this second stop of President Xi Jinping's state visit to France, Dr. Jane?
Yeah, I totally agree with Tangen's view that for me, it looks like a kind of a family reunion. So there is a very strong family atmosphere there. And as regards to the place, Tarbes, it really have several other dimensions of the place chosen. As you have said, it's a very cherished memory for the president, and then also it's the location of the airplane industry that is a key sector for bilateral cooperations. So this kind of connection built, the ties had been strengthened, definitely will increase the mutual trust of the two presidents. That, of course, will spill all over into the two countries' mutual strategic trust.
Well, dear guest, we'll be getting back to you on this. President Macron has chosen a particular place in the Pyrenees Mountains to take President Xi Jinping during his visit to France, a location that President Macron fostered fond memories during his childhood years. Our correspondent, Ken Brown, has more.
Over 3,000 meters tall at its highest peaks and stretching over 300 kilometers, welcome to the Hautes-Pyrénées. Within this stunning panorama, you'll find the Pic du Midi, accessible by cable car from La Mongie ski station, one of the sites chosen by French President Emmanuel Macron for Chinese President Xi Jinping's state visit. The area is also famous for local delicacies like le porc noir de Bigorre, or pork from the native black pig, which could well be on the menu for both state leaders. Business owners here are also hoping the visit will provide a tourism boost from China.
Yeah, they see the beautiful place, and then I think most of Chinese will want to come where the president meets the French president also, and then probably the Chinese people they are interesting to try the French food. Yeah, I think it will be good for the tourism, for the economy here in this beautiful place.
This is the biggest station here of Pyrenees. I think it's a very good thing for the station because maybe Chinese people, even if they have Himalaya, they can discover a little more mountain here and French specialties.
With its breathtaking views of the Pyrenees Mountains and famous haute cuisine, it's a place close to President Macron's heart. His grandmother lived in the nearby town of Bagnères de Bigorre, and he has been visiting here since his youth. Bagnères de Bigorre, population 7,500, nestles peacefully in the foothills of the Pyrenees and comes to life during the ski season and when the world-famous Tour de France cycling race passes through. Further down the mountain, the aviation industry thrives in the area. Airbus has its headquarters in Toulouse, and one of its subsidiaries, Tarmac Aerosave, has recently established a joint venture with the city of Chengdu, focused on the recycling of aircraft parts. An area of great personal importance to Emmanuel Macron that he wants to share with President Xi, a state visit with a personal touch. Ken Brown for CGTN in the French Pyrenees.
Relations between China and France have developed well in recent years. The two sides' presidents have built strong mutual trust and friendship. Now let's take a look at some of their informal meetings.
Confucius said, "It's a pleasure to have friends coming from afar."
In 2019, a 17th century French translation of An Introduction to the Analects of Confucius was presented to President Xi Jinping as a national gift from his French counterpart Emmanuel Macron when they met in Nice. The gift is now kept in China's National Library. The meeting came as the two sides celebrated the 55th anniversary of diplomatic relations. The two leaders discussed bilateral relations and fields of cooperation. The same year, Macron visited Shanghai. It was his first visit to the city. Xi Jinping welcomed Macron at the Yuyuan Garden. Built in Ming Dynasty more than 400 years ago, the garden is now a key site under state-level protection with dozens of pavilions, rocks, and ponds. The two presidents discussed the meeting of civilizations and agreed to promote mutual learning between their cultures. They also watched performances from traditional Chinese operas. Last year, the two presidents held an informal meeting in southern China's Guangzhou after a string of official meetings in Beijing. They strolled through the pine garden close to Baiyun Mountain, enjoying the scenery of the garden. They had tea by the water, discussing the past and present. At Baiyun Hall, Xi and Macron listened to the Guqin melody 高山流水, or high mountain and flowing water.
Comment s'appelle ce morceau? 流水。流水就是高山流水，千年古琴呐，奏的是这个千年绝唱，高山流水盼知音呐。
From the meeting in Nice to the talks at the Pine Garden, President Xi and President Macron have had in-depth exchanges. The two presidents have led the development of bilateral strategic cooperation with a positive impact on the world.
Now, for the latest on Chinese President Xi Jinping's state visit to France, let's cross live to our reporter Zhao Yunfei. At the town of Tarbes, Yunfei, we know Chinese President Xi Jinping and his wife Peng Liyuan have just arrived in Tarbes. Tell us more and bring us up to date.
Well, Pandang, I'm here at Lemonji, and this is a mountainous area that is basically more than a 1-hour drive from downtown Tarbes. And this is the place where Chinese President Xi and French President Emmanuel Macron, they will have gathered over here and probably have lunch together over here. And then speaking of Tarbes, this is a city that is really a small town that is really known for its ski resort. So this is certainly the mount of a ski resort, and also known for its good food as well as many industries as well. I'm going to talk about the weather a little bit. You probably can see from my glasses, it's raining heavily and then it's snow very much. But when you see the arrival of President Xi, it was down the mountain, so the weather is a little bit better. But over here, the sun come up a little bit, so the weather it's a little cold over here. But it really gives a different feeling to the Chinese president because we travel all the way from Beijing, and it should be very, very warm now in Beijing. So it will be a very pleasant and interesting experience for both of the two presidents. And also we traveled from the airport and we came across with a bunch of students, international students and Chinese compatriots who are welcoming at the airport, and they're quite excited because a lot of them travel from the towns nearby, and a lot of them travel overnight and had a sleepless flight. Some told us that this is a great opportunity for them to see the Chinese president, and as we mentioned before, Tarbes is the city, a small town that has a personal attachment with the French President Emmanuel Macron, and it's expected to have a more layer of personal tie that laid out between the two heads of state. Now back to you.
Thank you very much, our reporter Zhao Yunfei in Tarbes in southwestern France. Now, guess let's talk more about this. Earlier, I noticed there was this interview with a local hotel manager in town of Tarbes. Of course, we've already talked about the extra significance of this very location to President Macron, but I noticed that interview with the hotel manager. He's expecting more Chinese tourists due to this high-profile visit. So looking at the big picture, China has extended unilateral visa exemptions for French citizens till the end of next year. And French this time is also considering more measures to facilitate fast-tracking visa processing for Chinese citizens. Why this visa issue is so important for the two sides, Dr. Jing?
Definitely it's important because, you know, it will to a large extent facilitate the mutual visits. Because of the visa exemption policies China has had for the 12 European countries, we could witness the increasing numbers of European visitors here. I think it's a very courageous step China has taken after COVID-19 because we have a lot of job to make up for the interruptions that have caused by COVID-19. So it's a very important of these policies. Besides that, I think it's also a very positive signal we have sent out to the world. We are becoming more and more open. We open our arms to welcome all the guests from the world to see China in their own eyes in order to disseminate to a large extent the misperceptions are there.
Yeah, usually, Mr. Tengen, talking about visa exemptions, it's kind of a bilateral and reciprocal fashion. And we noticed since last year, China has made unilateral visa exemptions to countries, many countries, including France. Why China is doing this? What does this tell?
People-to-people exchanges. It's hard to have them if you can't get them.
Right.
I mean, you have to get together in order to understand each other. And, you know, you're absolutely right. COVID-19 period isolated everybody. But China in particular, and during that period of time, you saw a rapid decrease in the perceptions of China. Now, nothing had changed, all right, but because people were isolated, they were more prone to believe whatever was put out there. So the only way to fight that long term is to get people together. Have them understand that, you know, everyone is just wanting a good, decent life. The vast majority of people are wonderful, and if you just get to know each other, it's good. So yes, it's very much hand in glove, and this is the kind of policy that you look for. It's one thing to talk about creating better relations. It's another thing to take the risk and say, look, we're just going to unilaterally. They didn't say you have to, if we give open access, you have to give back open access. They just said we're going to do it. But what has that done? Now that's encouraged France to say, well, yeah, this is a good thing for us. They're certainly going to, that poor hotel owner, I don't think he really understands how many people are going to come. It's going to be very, very crowded.
The more the merrier, I think.
Well, the more the merrier, but it can be kind of, I don't think people have an understanding of the scale of China, and if just a 0.001% went there, it would overwhelm the town. But it's only 160 kilometers from Toulouse, from where Airbus is. There are quite a bit of number of facilities there, and you have the whole Pyrenees. It's not just this town. There are many other places, very picturesque, beautiful, and I especially suggest that they try the black pig. It is just absolutely wonderful. They eat acorns and things like that. It's a very special diet, and the taste is just delicious.
Okay, mark that in mind. One task to finish in the near future, maybe. Anyways, since we're talking about people-to-people exchanges, looking at big picture, 18 cooperation agreements signed at this time. Quite some are also dedicated to people-to-people exchanges regarding youth exchanges, tourism, and TV and film and TV, and even cultural exchanges based on people-to-people exchanges. Why this matters so much to the build-up of better bilateral ties, Ms. Tangen?
Well, I mean, the French are very proud of their culture. I mean, they have their own film industry. They have a very vibrant popular music scene, and they see themselves as the bastion of French culture. Remember, French was the diplomatic language. France was the center of the world in terms of fashion, culture, understanding, intellectual, painting. So many of the arts were there, especially prior to and post World War II. So this is really encouraging. If my French friends, you talk to them about culture, they're very certain of their views, but this is something that they really love, and they're really proud of it. And they know that China has a long, proud history. There's been interaction between the cultures for many, many years. I mean, if you go to any palace in France, they always have the Chinese garden there, because that was a very, very popular thing. And we're talking hundreds of years ago. So the connections are deep. It's a way in which both sides can do it. And you heard those fashion designers talking about how they're enriching each other. A lot of Western fashion has it's a cycle, big jeans, little jeans, this type of thing. But the influence of another culture like China, Asia, as Japan and South Korea did, not just talking, it's just the infusion of fresh ideas really helps both sides.
Well, dear guests, let's get more updates now. Confucius is one of the world's most influential philosophers, and his ideas continue to influence generations of Chinese people as well as people across the globe. 5 years ago, Chinese President Xi Jinping received an introduction to the Analects of Confucius published in 1688 from his French counterpart Emmanuel Macron during a visit to Nice. The original copy now sits in the National Library of China. Our reporter Dong Xue has been granted rare access to this very book and discovers the story behind it.
With a leather cover, a golden overhang, and the edges painted red, the French version of An Introduction to the Analects of Confucius is a classic, featuring a bookbinding style from the Age of Enlightenment in France. The volume is about the political ideas, ethical thought, and moral concepts of China more than 2,000 years ago. No one expected it would be returned to China more than 2 centuries after it left. In March 2019, the book was given to Chinese President Xi Jinping as a national gift by French President Emmanuel Macron as the two countries celebrated the 55th anniversary since they established diplomatic ties.
他面对的对象是这些 princess。
The book was addressed to princes in ancient Europe who owned territory and would be able to govern in future. So what lessons could these readers take away? It was this moral or political principle that Chinese emperors used in the way they governed the country.
As a classic of traditional Chinese culture, the Analects of Confucius was introduced to Europe as early as the 17th century, and many scholars have compared the status of Confucius in Chinese civilization to that of Socrates in the West.
The book proves that exchanges between China and France began in the 17th century and have continued to the present day. I think the book is very rare. It's not only a medium for books, but also a bridge connecting the ancient and the modern China and Europe.
President Xi once said rich philosophical ideas, a humanistic spirit, edifying thoughts, and moral concepts rooted in traditional Chinese culture can provide the inspiration for both understanding and transforming the world, governing the country, and developing morals. Today, the ideas of Confucius continue to inspire some young people in France.
Confucius is a very important philosopher, and these ideas of education can apply today, so we can learn from him.
Okay, so I remember reading some parts from the Analects of Confucius back in the days, back in high school, and I remember to treat and to act to others like you want them to treat you and to act to. That's basically all I remember from Confucius, and I think that's the main meaning of his ideas.
The Analects of Confucius have been labeled one of the 10 most influential Chinese books in France, and the book has even inspired some to learn Chinese. And the Chinese philosopher's influence is also seen in the growth in the number of Confucius institutes across Europe, especially France. And the country was one of the earliest to incorporate Chinese language teaching into the national educational system, promoting cultural exchanges and playing an important role in a wider relationship. Dongxue, CGTN, Beijing.
Chinese President Xi Jinping has arrived in Tarbes in southwest France, the second stop of his state visit to France. President Xi Jinping's plane touched down at Tarbes Lord Prenez Airport in the last hour. President Xi Jinping and his wife Peng Liyuan were welcomed by French President Emmanuel Macron and his wife Brigitte Macron at the airport. Now, dear guests, focusing on President Xi Jinping's second stop in France at this time, in the town of Tarbes, and also we were talking about cultural links, people-to-people exchanges, historical links maybe, and because we just watched the story of that very precious book given to President Xi Jinping from President Macron as a gift. Dr. Jing, tell us more about the cultural links between the two sides. Maybe since ancient times, for hundreds of years, high-level exchanges, business exchanges, and academic exchanges maybe, and what role this kind of links are playing right now in bilateral ties.
Yes, we can see from the story of the state gifts that China and France have had a long history of cultural exchange. Both China and France have a long history of culture. With the kind of exchange actually enrich each other's culture. So that definitely important idea we should remember today when we deal with the cultural differences. So that's related to your question, what's the importance of a cultural exchange for the two countries' relationship? Because if you would like to understand the country, you need to better understand the culture, the philosophy, the idea of the country from ancient times, from their history, from their culture, etc., etc. That is why China has always advocated for the kind of a mutual exchange and a mutual learning process culturally. So that is an indispensable part for we always call for the strategic mutual understanding of the two countries. Culture is an indispensable dimension of that.
Thank you very much, Dr. Jingling and Mr. Anatankan there. And that's it for this edition of The World Today on CGTN. I'm Pandong in Beijing. Stay tuned.
Thank you.